my first question for you, Terry, is what is one of the most boring things about you?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's got to be boring, mundane, like something that you're like nobody would ever want to know this.
Oh, you know, if someone was to say to me, what's something interesting about you? I'd be like, oh, I don't know. And then you're like, what's boring about you? I'm like, yeah. Well, I guess that I recall a lot of really boring facts that no one else is interested in.
Okay, can you
Uh,
can you prove it? Prove it right now?
okay, so one of Al Capone's famous quotes is, "You get further in life with a kind word and a gun than just a kind word." So I don't know where on earth that would be of any use to anybody, or anybody who'd want to know that.
Oh man, you struck a chord with me though. I like that quote for some reason. It just feels good.
Yeah,
And it rings
yeah,
true, doesn't it?
it does. It does.
Yeah.
It's like it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. That's yeah. I like that quote a lot. All right.
And
Well,
like,
you
yeah,
fair. You proved it. Yeah.
yeah. So
All
there's
right.
a lot of
So
weird stuff. Yeah,
weird stuff like what? What else do you have? Do you have
just just re-
any other
oh,
things?
no, it's just those random facts. You know, like I spent a large part of my adolescent life remembering facts about cars, and now I'm like in my 30s, and I'm like, I can't remember something, but I can remember
Yeah.
these random facts about cars, and I'm just like, yep, that's wasted space in my grey matter.
Yeah. Oh man, that's great. Who knows? Maybe that'll come in use one day when you're on
Yeah,
Jeopardy or something like that.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, yeah. Our Harry. So how about let's dig into something a little bit deeper, a little more meaningful. What does darkness and light mean to you metaphorically?
You said talk about before about the questions, and I'd forgotten them except for this one. So, and I have struggled with this one over the last few days, um, because I really like the definition one of your other interviewees had, which was the absence of light. Because we know that light pushes away darkness, but for me, darkness is tension. You know, it's not bad per se. It's just a lack of awareness, or it's a hiding of reality. Because I guess things don't change necessarily with light. Like plants and things do, but what light does is just it's a revealing thing.
Right, that's beautiful. So with that definition, have you ever experienced a sunrise in your life?
I have, and I thought about which example I would use, and I think this is probably this is a monumental one. So I grew up my entire life thinking I was particularly stupid. I thought I was nothing short of an idiot, and I thought everyone was holding out on me. I thought that I'd failed school. I thought that I should just aim low and get through.
Yeah.
And I worked for a number of jobs, wasn't really successful, really struggled with things, and things would always go wrong. And and I'm a bit awkward, and I was like, maybe I'm just an idiot. And if I was an idiot, I wouldn't know this anyway. So that sort of proved the point, because
You're too
when you meet,
self-aware.
yeah. So I thought if I was stupid, I wouldn't know, and that way I can't prove it. And
Okay.
I've told this story to a few guys, and one of my friends, Luke, he thinks this is brilliant. He's like, this is like, because I proved it to myself was if I was really, really stupid, I wouldn't be able to have a driver's license. And I had a driver's license. And so this was like, and as I sort of went through young adulthood and stuff, I was sort of coming to terms with this. And then when I moved into New Zealand, I lost a couple of jobs because we had a massive recession. So you guys had the global financial crisis, and that sort of affected everybody. Global is the word. So we had a lot of stuff sort of come apart here. I just moved to New Zealand, and I'd bought a house and had a job and was working and had a wee child, and son is unemployed, and I lost my job 3 times in the space of a year and a bit. And then so those false narratives fell back, you know, going, maybe I'm just an idiot, maybe I'm just not capable. And my wife was working for a place that does sort of remedial teaching for school children, and she had a lot of resources on hand. And I think she was formerly a child psychologist in South Africa and doing a lot of stuff around intelligence. And she said, hey, why don't you come around and we'll do a few assessments on you, just because you're unemployed now, and I've got these new tests and I want to test them out. And we'll see what your aptitude is, and we'll see if we can help you find a sort of career path. And because I had nothing better to do. I was at home and looking for work and sort of unsure of my direction, especially seeing there's no plumbing work, which is my former trade. So I went there, and these tests weren't for children, they were for anybody. And she was a psychologist. She knew what she was doing. She was actually trying to help me out of a hole.
Yeah.
And I did these tests, and I absolutely crushed them, like test ceiling on some of them, and like non-verbal reasoning of like 90-something percentile. And I was like, your test is broken. And I'm like, no, you're actually really intelligent. I was like, yeah, thanks.
Well, that's good timing to have that experience, though.
Yeah, so that was sort of sunrise for me, because at that point I was like, well, I need to accept that the people that created the test were smarter than me. And especially if I think I'm stupid, they were smarter than me. So I had to accept that. And then, so that sort of pushed me to go to university. Yeah. And then I thought, what do I want to do? I want to work with people, and I want to work with children. And I did that. And now my first year of uni was hard, but I got reasonably good grades, and Ninka helped me a lot and sort of really got me understanding how to study. But then by my second year, I did it on my own. And my third year, I did it on my own. And my fourth year, I did it on my own. And my grades weren't fantastic. But again, I never excelled at school. I could barely write a legible sentence when I started university. And by the end of it, I was writing, pretty significant essays. So that was sort of like a slow dawn. And I thought, when I was thinking about this, because I did my first deliberate sunrise, so I went out looking for it a few weeks ago when I emailed you. And I sort of realized that a sunrise isn't just like, boom, lights are on. There's this real lovely long progression of light over time. And so the lights were coming on. And I did this 4 years of university, and the lights were coming on. And then I thought, well, it was all done over the internet. It was all done extramurally. So I would sit at my desk at home, I'd study, I wouldn't meet any people. So I had no idea how I was, because intelligence is only a comparative thing, like,
it's true.
Your dog can sit and roll over, and you're like, that's a smart dog, but it's not a person, So, so I was like, how do I fit into this bigger scheme of things? And I signed up for a post-grad paper course, and it was local. So I had to come every Monday night to do this course. And I was stuck in a room with about 30 other adults, all with the same qualification, all doing the same job. And I could do it. And I couldn't just do it. I could do it well. And I could go toe to toe with any person in the room discussing a concept. And if there was something new raised, I could not only understand it just as fast as them, but maybe even faster. And I could work with the content. And I was like, wow. And I remember coming home saying, Ninka, I'm not stupid. Like I can actually do this well, And like my last my second last assignment passed my whole course. Like I got my second last assignment in, and it was like, you know, I got enough points to pass the entire. I didn't have to submit the last paper if I didn't want to, and
Wow.
I was like, oh, this is great. Like suddenly all the lights were on, and I was like, you know what, you can do this. Well done. And that was probably the definitive one for me.
And that is quite an evolution, Terry. You know, it's funny because that really resonates with me and some of my own experiences. When I was in second grade, so I don't know what that equates to for you. I think I was probably 8 years old. I think, yeah,
Yep.
8 years old.
Yeah, 3 or 4. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So around that same age, I had a teacher tell me that I was stupid. Um,
Yeah.
just straight up said that I was stupid, and because I couldn't understand. I had to ask a bunch of times about how to do this one thing, and I just really didn't get it, and that struck me hard. I mean, I remember thinking, she's right. I mean, she's the teacher. She's an adult here. She obviously knows
Yeah.
what is
Yeah.
smart and what is stupid, and I fit in the stupid category, and so I
Yeah.
carried that for a long time, and even with good experiences, positive reinforcement of, hey, you're actually a smart kid or a creative kid, or you see things from a different perspective. That was
Mm.
still one of those false beliefs that I had about myself, that false narrative that we were talking about earlier. And man, it it sticks with you throughout your lifetime unless you do something about it or have some eye-opening experiences that lead you to do something about it. So I think that's what's so cool about that aptitude test, right? Is that it was revealing of some. It was like that was when, in my mind, when light started to even just begin on the horizon, right?
That's right.
And
That's when that
you
crack of
started,
dawn turns up.
yeah. So you started to have that shift of no, maybe there is something different here that's taking place. And then, I mean, look at look how far you've come, man. I mean, for you to not only have discovered that about yourself, but then really truly believe it. You know, like you believe it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
quite funny because we're talking about this now, and because of your story, I'm now thinking of me and my job. So I'm a primary school teacher, and
Okay.
I if I look at what I do well in my job, I would say the thing I do well is building children up
You're the
in
man.
their in who they are as a person. Like, and I can accept I'm not the greatest reading and writing teacher. I'm not the greatest math teacher. I'd probably rather teach math out of those 3 subjects. But at the same time, what I do well is build up a child's self-worth. And that's always what I've done. Like I've had emails from parents years later saying, hey, we really appreciate what you've done for our son, you know?
Wow.
And that's the most meaningful thing to me. Like when I look at a child sitting
Yeah.
there, you know, I want to see them as accessing their full potential. Now, like, and for me, I learned to read and write at 26 when I went to university. Like I could read, but I wasn't great. But
Yeah.
and, like my writing, literacy skills were awful. Like, you know, I had to learn all my grammar rules at 26. I had to learn all how to formulate an essay and write and have a sentence that could be read by someone else and understood, you know, at 26. So in my own mind, I'm like, well, it's not the most important thing. Because if you
Yeah.
have that understanding beforehand, if you are 8 and you understand that, you know, you're a human and you're a fantastic person and you are capable, you're going to pick up those skills along the way. But if you're
Yeah.
thinking, I'm an idiot, I'm wasting my time here, the teacher hates me and school's crap, well, you've already set yourself up against things.
Yeah. Wow. You know, as cool as I was able to talk to a friend of mine who, he is a third grade teacher, so kind of same area as you, and he
Yeah,
said that he's been given a lot of students that need a mentor, a father figure, or a male role model in their lives for
yeah,
the reason of, um, a lack that needs filled, right?
Yeah.
And if you think about the impact that he can have on a kid and the way that you're impacting children and saying, I'm going to give you something that's so much better than knowledge of math. I'm going to give you a belief in who you are as an individual,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
an ability to see yourself as a work in progress, and
Yeah.
as somebody who's flawed and not perfect, but able to grow and change. To believe that about yourself, like the rest of your life. I mean,
Yeah.
how impactful is that on a person and their own development? I mean,
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, I applaud you, Terry. That's incredible.
Yeah, that's right. You know, knowing that 3 times 7 is 21, that's going to help you at a heap of times over your lifetime. But
Right.
knowing that you have those principles, that's going to help you every moment of every day.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish you were my teacher in second grade instead of the one that told me I was stupid. Who knows where I'd be?
That's right. There we go. Hey, I have
I
bad days
might.
too, though. So, you know.
I bet you haven't called any kid stupid though. I'd put money on
Nah,
that.
probably thought it a few times, maybe.
Yeah, well, that's half. I've heard the quote, "Half of intellect is knowing when to shut up." So if you if you think about it, not opening your mouth is a part of that that process.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
oh, that's great, man. So what's the takeaway from this? Like, what if you have to sum up what you learned from that experience, like, and share it with somebody in a couple of sentences, like, what is it?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, my takeaway would be never underestimate where you are in the sunrise process. Because for me, like even over this week, there's been highs and lows. And some days you think, you know what? Everything I'm doing is wrong. I just want to give up on this and completely change tack. Or I just want to hide away from being vulnerable and being wholehearted. And because that wholeheartedness, I think, is fundamental to absolutely everything. That is front and center. And if you know that this whole life is one epic story that God has written, and like, because God has this amazing series of stories, and they're all written individually for each one of his children. Like, you think of a good dad making up a story for his kid for bed. Like, we've all been there and done it and made up these nonsense stories. Well, here we've got the perfect father who's written these perfect stories for each one of us. And some of them are romances, and some of them are tragedies, and some of them are epics, and some of them are, you know, adventures. But all of them have a triumphant ending. I guess it can't be tragedies then. But and some of them are comedies, because the tragedy and comedy are so similar. But yeah, I think that you can't underestimate where you are in the story.
Wow.
And for me, that's important, to know that I've got this really weird first half of my life, and I don't know how long the other half is going to go, and that would ruin my fraction skills. So maybe it's 2/3. But you don't know, but there is a story. Like, you know, I was telling you a lot of my backstory beforehand, and that's a pretty good story, I feel. I hope it gets into a really good place, you know, where I can use what I've learnt to help other people. I hope that's how my story ends. But in the meantime, I can't live my life expecting that the story's going to end the way I write it. All I know is that all this foreshadowing, all this prior stuff is going to lead into something. And I'm not the author. And
Right.
you know, Hamlet can't criticize Shakespeare for killing him. You know, Shakespeare is the artist, and he is the greatest author apparently, for being able to write the story. So, you know, I'm just a character in it. I just gotta, yeah. I've been rambling. I'm sorry.
No, man, a couple of things. I love the passion that you're speaking from, and then too, I mean, you're saying you hope that by the end of your life that you're making a positive impact on somebody, right? From the things that you've learned and gained. And I think that you're doing that already. And if you don't recognize that, then you're kind of missing out on some of that fulfillment and
Yeah.
richness that is available to you. You know, some of the best influences that I've ever had in my life were my teachers, and I think back on a couple of them in particular, and they had a profound influence on the choices that I made and the person that I wanted to become. And even if only because I saw them and wanted to emulate them. I bet there's plenty of times where your nonverbal impact, your non-direct impact on them is even more profound than what you think that you're doing, or what they say. Hey, thanks for teaching me that, 3 times 7. That was really cool to learn
Yeah.
that. More than that, thanks for teaching me how to just be kind and be respecting and loving of my own self. So
Yeah. Yeah.
don't miss out on that, man. That is rich and good, and I'm grateful that you are that kind of person out in the world right now. But man, how cool. Okay, so what about wholehearted? What does it mean to be wholehearted to you?
I think it's a shift of being for someone who hasn't actually embraced themselves in their life. Because, like, for me, coming into that sunrise, I was always a passenger in my life. And I think and having that as a false narrative, that stays as something I fall back into. My biggest, not fear, but probably one of my major bad habits is to be a passenger and let my life take the lead. That sounds really, sounds a bit sort of self empowering and something. I'm not, and that's not sort of thing. That's not really what I'm into. But being playing an active role in your story and being involved and enjoying where you're at. See, that's the thing for me. Like I would live my life with a heck of a lot of dissatisfaction, and then because I wasn't mindfully aware or actively participating in my life, it's really easy to be negative about things, but when you're not, when you actually are wholehearted, those things that are hard, you've accepted them, and that's okay. So a really lame example was I had a sick day and I picked my kids up from school and I took them to the local library, and they had their library cards with, no, they forgot their library cards. No, I forgot their library cards. So I picked them up from school. I was taking them to school, and I got to school and I realized that we didn't have their library cards. And I was actually annoyed, and I was annoyed at myself because it was my job to remember them. And I thought, do I just get angry and resentful, or, I have all these emotions and I can choose one. The wheel's spinning. You can just pick one. And that if you're angry and resentful, that's good enough. And you can blame something in your environment or in the universe. And I thought, no, I've got to own this. And I thought, maybe something good will come of it. And that was my ownership. And we went to the library, and the librarian said, well, you give us your full name and we'll give you the number on your card. And if you know your library, website password, you can just use the systems as usual.
Oh,
So we went there and we learned this new skill. now that's awesome that we don't actually need our library cards if you have this number. And it's on your old library slip with all the books that you've got on it. Well, I've got my daughter with me. She's 11, and she quickly just promptly remembers the code. And then that was about a month ago. And then my wife Nika says to her, "Oh, you don't need your library card anymore, do you?" Or something like that to her. And she's like, she just recites the number to her, like 7G3. You know, it's random.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Wow, isn't that fantastic?" Like, and that would never have happened if I'd been grumpy or resentful or depressed or whatever, and instead of going, "Hey, let's just see what happens." Like, yes, Dad has been absent-minded and stuffed up, but let's just see what happens.
Man, I love that story. I don't know why you would call it a lame story. That seems to be perfectly fitting. It's like, because it's not that it needs to be any kind of grand thing that where we're learning to be wholehearted, right? It's in the day to day. It's in the small interactions, the little choices, the thousands of little choices that we make every moment. It's so that is so beautiful. I like the switch flipping and moving towards being wholehearted instead. What a curious approach, and it turned out good.
Yeah. And I think that what's important to me for that was that I saw that thought process happen in my own mind. So, I could have fallen back into old thinking or false narratives or what have you, but I saw that process and I said, "No, I'm just gonna test this out." And I think that for me, having that there as an experience, I can draw on that when other things go wrong.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, just the intention of it, man. That is so cool to be aware of that shift. That's where we should all be at until it becomes second nature, right?
But that's on a good day. That's on a good day.
Okay, that's fair. All right. So what about people in your life? Who's somebody that represents being wholehearted to you, and how have they impacted you?
Ooh, that's a good one. Wow. There's a few people out there. My father-in-law is a guy, and he just speaks his mind, and that's really, really cool. And sometimes I always feel pressure to agree with him, but the fact is, you don't need to agree with him because he actually is wholehearted. He does things his way, and he thinks outside the box, but he's very well reasoned, and you can debate a topic with him. You don't have to agree, and I like that. It's wholehearted, and I'm impressed by that. When I've come to him with things, he hasn't, like, if I do something that he doesn't like, or I've made mistakes that could, upset him, he doesn't, he's a really gracious person. And then I can go, you know what, that's awesome. Because he's wholehearted in it, but he's also wholehearted in his faith, and he knows grace. And that's fantastic. I think I've really enjoyed reading Wild at Heart, and I find John Elridge in his writing wholehearted, because he doesn't lose the fact that we're so flawed. Like sometimes we feel that we need to be perfect. We need to have all this stuff worked out, especially as adults and as parents and as husbands. We need to have all the problems solved, and he's very clear about, hey, he's made all the mistakes he's learned all the lessons the hard way, and I like that. And you say people in your life, and it's like, he's not a person in my life, but I've read Fathered by God and Wild at Heart probably a few times in the last year and a half. So it's on a constant cycle, that one. So that's it's almost like you can feel him. Yeah, and my mother-in-law as well. She's the same. She's an amazing person. Just authentic, really authentic.
Wow.
And that's really important to me. I'm sure
Okay, so Yeah, no, I mean, it feels like you have some really good influences in your life is what it comes down to. That's great that
Yeah.
you have that. Um, do you have any fears, doubts, negative beliefs about yourself that you're currently overcome, or and how are you working to overcome those things?
Like I talked about intelligence, and I still get that from time to time. And I still have to work through that one because when something happens, it's always the first. It's so quick to come up. I think being enough, being allowed to be a flawed person, that's a tough one, and being able to take for myself. Like I just had a conversation with my wife yesterday. She was out doing something for herself, and I thought, I said to her, this is awesome that you can do that. I said, because I struggle, I can't. I want to go hunting and go for a shoot, which is only going to take me like a few hours, and I find it hard to say I would like to do this. How can we fit this in our schedule? And I was thinking doing it on that evening. Like that's really difficult for me. So
Yeah.
here I am, saying how amazing wholehearted living is, and I'm not doing it. Like I'm failing at that, and I'm sitting there going, well, I do it here in my life, and I do it with these things as it relates to me in my own bits and pieces. But there's this massive area in my life where I'm not, and that's massive, and I struggle with that. And I struggle with being allowed to do that, and knowing that being allowed to do that, being that I'm enough as a person to take that for myself. Because at the scheme of things, you're not actually taking it for yourself anyway, because you're actually caring for yourself, which actually makes you stronger for the team. But
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, that's probably the hardest one.
Yeah. Oh man, I can relate to you there. I mean, there's so many areas in my life where I feel like I'm crushing it. I'm doing really well in those areas, and then I look at the ones where I'm not doing so hot, and I say to myself, or I have the propensity to say to myself that I'm the worst because while I might have these other areas going good, I'm lacking here. So
Yeah.
how can I ever be proud of where I'm at in my life if I'm still lacking? And am I enough? That is ultimately one of the deepest questions, especially for men, and
Yeah.
it's related to strength, intelligence, and whatever else. But I'm there with you on that one, Terry. That's one that I struggle with on a recurring weekly basis.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
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 Well, man, I applaud you for the steps that you are making, though, and the how far you've already come. And the amount of time that you've been alive and your experiences and everything. It's culminated to this point, right?
Yeah. 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 And you say that like the time you've been alive, and I sit there and go, oh, I'm 36. I'm so old. Like I can't. Like everything's so hard. And then I talk to some other guys who are doing, the same thing as me and making changes and being awesome. And
Yeah.
I really respect them. And they're like, dude, you're a baby. Like, like your perspective is all wrong. And I
Yeah.
look at it and go, yeah, I see where you're coming from. All
Yeah.
right.
Right. It's all relative, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, same thing goes for age and all that. I mean, you got a 90-year-old that could call an 80-year-old a baby because he's still a decade younger. So
Yeah, that's right. And yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Oh man. Well, this has been awesome, Terry. How's the sun looking for you? Have you seen it yet?